Welcome. A new Battle Shonen manga just came out in Weekly Shonen Jump, and as always, I'm here to talk about it. The manga in question is Goron's Egg by Shuhei Tanizaki. And look, I'm going to try to not be biased, as I am getting a bit burned out from all Battle Shonens, to the point where this year I've actually been focusing a lot on reading other kinds of manga. That said, it's not like Weekly Shonen Jump is just pumping out Battle Shonens non-stop. So it would be an exaggeration to say that there's been too many, but I am still a bit burned out. Nonetheless, let's talk about this manga. Goron's Egg, as you might have guessed it, is a manga about Goran and his weird talking egg that he finds one day, one that needs his warmth to survive, which he gladly gives to them. But this is not an ordinary egg. You should probably have figured that one out. I told you it talks. Normal eggs don't talk. This is actually the that egg. These are the villains of the story. 20 years ago they jumped into our realm and waged a war against humans, a war that they won. With civilization destroyed, a few humans still alive find themselves to be obedient slaves of the bad boys. The bad boys. Guys, this egg is actually Homa, the son of the previous king, was killed 20 years ago, with the new one being the one that decided to break the peace and wage war on humans. So Homa's goal is to take revenge on the monster who killed his father, and become the new king, creating a new era of peace, a quest that Goran is more than willing to help out. While most humans that we see in this first chapter are butt-licking obedient men, Goran has a bit more of a rebellious attitude, which leads to a lot of punishment, virtue of the monster ruling over this group, Haberlam. That one I can't pronounce. This is actually what gives Goran his pretty cool scars, which, by the way, I really do like his design. Sure, he does indeed have the stupidest hair in the business, but it's design that looks a lot better in the manga while you're reading it than it did in the promotional art. I also liked how he's jacked. We don't really get a lot of jacked Battle Shonen main characters, at least not since the 80s. This guy feels like he can arm wrestle my buff boy Asta. So all is well. Well, at least as well as it can be when you're a slave of an alien race living in the ruins of civilization. That is until the other dudes tell Abraham about the egg, which he doesn't seem to like that very much, having in mind that he just literally cuts Goran's head off, which really caught me off guard. Part of me actually thought that this could be an interesting development, that maybe Goran could be a fake main character, as that makes Oma finally hatch and take revenge on them, and he would be the main character, the literal Goran's egg. It would not have been the first time we have a central character in our first chapter that turns out to not be the main character. I was thinking back on Akana Banashi, which her dad is the main character of chapter 1, so it could work, but obviously it's not what happens because Homa just has a way of reviving Goran. But he doesn't just revive him, because when he comes back to life, he does have superpowers, because this is a Battle Shonen. Don't forget that. And so Goran fights Aberlam with his new powers, kills Aberlam, and declares that he's the one who's going to slay the evil king, and the chapter ends. It's actually a pretty decent fight. I feel like a lot of these first chapters have a fight that is solely to show the main character's powers, and this is honestly what that is. The main villain barely gets hit because Goran is just that cool. So often what I try to do is to focus on the paneling and the flow and the art, and I thought that was pretty good, especially art-wise. I think it looks really cool. The slides going through the panels across the page looked perfect, and the double spread of Abraham dying is the one that you're going to be showing other people when you want them to get invested into the manga, because just look at it, it's breathtaking. It's actually one of the coolest looking double spreads I've ever seen, and I mean that genuinely with no exaggeration. I just really loved it. One of the things that I really want to be explored in the next couple of chapters is the world. This feels like a fantasy world, and honestly that's what I assumed from the previews of this manga, but it's not. It's barely 20 years into the future. The ruins of our world are very present throughout the chapter, and I thought that was really cool. A post-apocalyptic fantasy world built upon the ruins of the modern world could be very fun, especially if they actually travel to real places in Japan, for example. I think there's potential here for very interesting and visually cool locations. All in all, I think Goron Egg does a lot of really good things, but most of them are in the visual field. The manga looks good. I actually think it looks better than it felt it was going to from the previews. The designs of the monsters are cool, the main character looks cool, the fight was great, the world looks great. However, while I don't think the manga does necessarily anything bad, I'm not sure if the actual story is going to win over a lot of people. A lot of people have been saying that this feels like a mid-2000s manga, and I agree to a certain point. Now, I don't think a manga looking like it released 20, 30, 50 years ago is necessarily an insult. I think modern manga taking on styles, genres, and tropes that haven't been touched regularly in decades can lead to some interesting results. Those would be new manga that are being created by people who have more decades of material to study and grew up in totally different environments and eras than the original authors. However, things are a bit different when it comes to manga that feels like they released in the mid-2000s. Because battle manga that looks like they were released 20 years ago is something that we are constantly saying. Half of the battle shonens that we see get this label. They are not retro manga in any way, they just feel closer to the bigger hits of the previous generation than they do the current one. But this style has never really left the field, it's just adventure manga. But we are at the point where adventure manga really isn't successful. It's hard to pull a new manga in this genre that truly feels like it's bringing anything really new to the table that we haven't seen in the last 30 years. And that's exactly where Goron Egg falls into. It's a guy with a cool sword fighting monsters. We saw that with Yaiba, not Kimetsu no Yaiba, Yaiba from 1988, and 37 years later, so many more manga have come and gone. So what does Goron Egg bring to the table? So far, not a lot. Cool visuals, super haircut. Look, it sucks. It legitimately does, because I don't think this is a bad manga. I don't think this is a bad first chapter. Honestly, I think it's kind of endearing, especially in an era where most successful battle manga tend to have to be a bit edgy. And this one is going to have some fans. All of them do, really, but I think people like Redwood or Ginken Gluna or the currently ongoing author are really going to enjoy this one. But ultimately, I don't think this is going to last. Not where we are right now. But if you want to know my first thoughts on the previous manga in Weekly Shonen Jump, you can click on the playlist on the left, and you can subscribe for all the future ones. And if you are still here, thank you very much, and I'll see you next video.